This week in history, we take you back to the year 2000 when the new millennium unfolded without the much feared computer meltdown, which meant we got to enjoy Cathy Freeman as the face and star of the Sydney Olympics. Tiger Woods winning the US and British Open championships to complete a career Grand Slam, and racing was about to witness the launch of one of the great careers, that of Ruby Walsh, thanks in no small part to Papillon.
They straighten up for home, 100 yards left to go. Papillon on the near side, Mealy Moss the far side, trying hard to wear him down. It's Papillon holding on with 50 yards left to go, and Papillon wins the Martel Grand National.
The story of Papillon is one of luck, good and bad, and of timing. With Ruby Walsh out of the saddle for many months with a broken leg, which meant it was Jason Titley who got the call up for the Willie Mullins horse in the big race, and that freed up Ruby to ride Papillon. Though in truth, had Ruby not been available, Papillon probably wouldn't have lined up in the big race itself. And the fact he even ended up in Ted Walsh's yard, well, that's a story in itself, as Ted explains.
My first encounter with Papillon was at Doncaster Sales. Ned McCormack, who was there to sell him as a 4-year-old, was in the stable alongside of where I was trying to sell something. And he didn't sell him in the ring. And when he came out of the ring, he was a gorgeous big bay horse by LaFontaine. And I always bought a couple of horses to go point of pointing. And I bought him off him. What his reserve at the time, I think, was 5,000 or 6,000. I'm not 100% sure. And I brought him home. And Ned was from Moneygall, which was his Obama country in Ireland, down in Tipperary. And there were people I knew well. They had the mare, and she had one for them, and they bred horses. He was, as I said, a smashing looking horse. Brought him home, and we broke him. Brendan Sheridan was with me at the time, and we broke him. And from day one, he was a lovely big ride and a great leopard, absolutely. But the idea was to go point to point on him. And during the winter, Betty Moran, Ruby was 16. I thought maybe he'd be a point to point horse for him in a year's time. Even he was only starting to ride racing. And Betty said to me, she was an owner of my father's and who had stayed with me when my dad passed on. And we got very friendly with the family. Her son spent a couple of winters here, Michael. And she said, if you have a nice horse in the yard that you like to keep, I buy him off you for Ruby to ride. And that's how he came about. So I said, I have a nice big horse here. And I said, we called him, because we had seen the picture, young Ted and myself and Ruby and Helen and Jennifer. We got to see the film with Papillon. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a great film. And we called the horse. Ted said, what a name it'd be for a horse. So we called him Papillon. We thought he'd make a lovely chaser. And I asked Charlie Swan, who was the top jockey at the time and a fellow who I admired, would he sit on him one day at Punchestown? Edward O'Grady was schooling a few horses, and we got permission to go around Punchestown and follow him. And he was a couple of good horses. Richard Dunwoody was riding one of them for him. And Charlie rode this horse around. And I said, follow O'Grady's horse around. I said, see what you think. So he come back into me. He said, this is some tool, he said. He said, I could have picked them two horses up. He said, that's a bit of a tall order. I'm telling you, he said, this is a real one, he said. Charlie was a real good judge. So I said, you ride him in the chase, by God I will, he says. He said, make sure you run him when I can ride him. So first time he ran a novice chase at Ferryhouse, Charlie rode him and he won. And it was a 2.25 mile chase, and he won well, jumped like a buck and won well. Knew then that we had something a bit special.
Look, he was a wonderful jumper, and Betty Moran was looking for a horse for me to ride, actually. So she had bought a horse called Wild Irish when I started riding, and unfortunately he got killed. So she wanted to replace him. So Dad sold Betty Papillon, and he went from strength to strength. I mean, the first time he ran in an Irish National, I was only, I think, 17. Charlie Swan rode him. I think he could have been favourite. And then the following year in '98, I got to ride him. He was top weight, 12 stone. I was an amateur. I think he was top weight off 133, I think. Bobby Joe beat him off 122. I think there was 32 runners in the Irish National. All the crying now about not full fields, or 22 in the Irish National. There was 8 shy of a full field back in 98 as well, but Bobby Joe came to beat Papillon in that Irish National in 98, and they went on to win the next 2 Grand Nationals in 99 and 2000.
Was sitting at a function one night alongside of Vincent O'Brien, who I was in awe of all my life through my father and my Uncle Ted. And I was talking to him, and he was mad talking. He was friendly with my dad and my Uncle Ted in the same part of Cork. And I was talking about the nationals to him and all the nationals he won. And I said, what kind of preparations? He says, the one thing I always did, he said, was I schooled him over hurls, or I ran him in a hurl race before I ran him in the national. Because he says, you know they can jump. The one thing you need to do is fill them with confidence. Don't go near anything big. Don't build a national fence. He says, they know what to do. He said, they want to go down there. He says, full of confidence. So he says, run him in a hurl race. I'd run him in a hurl race or school him over hurls. So I ran to say that if it's good enough for MV, it's definitely good enough for TM Walsh. So I ran him 11% on the hurl race and he ran a cracker, finished third. Ran really well. So I said, all systems go. The biggest problem was to convince Betty to the national was going to be safe. Double safe for the horse, and she could say, young Ruby, if young Ruby gets hurt, I'll never forgive you and all this. So anyway, we got her to persuade her daughter-in-law, Anne Moran, who's an Irish girl, Anne Kelly, got around her, and we ended up in entry. And seemingly somewhere, as they led up to it, the lads involved at that Jim McGrath and Johnny Frank and a few of them lads and Tom Segal all sort of got this idea that this horse was being prepared for the national. And he drifted from, I had a few quid on him. Eamon Bean was the farrier at the time. And he came in one day and he said he's 50-1. So we had a few quid on it, 50-1 each way. And then that was great. Then he ended up on the day, I think maybe an 8 or 10-1 shot. A lot of money for him. And it was a big hoo-ha. Big, gorgeous looking horse. So like the rest is a fairy tale. Do you know what I mean? To have a national horse that you had bought for a woman that was like your fairy godmother, to be ridden by your son in a first national, for it all to come off was, I remember Claire Balding coming over to me. She was walking around the time to talk about the horse and one thing and the other, and I was just in awe of everything, and it just was magic.
I suppose in the build-up to the Grand National, I was just thrilled to be in entry with a ride in the Grand National. We'd looked at a good few Grand Nationals before, heading for Liverpool, and kind of had come up with a theory that, line up down the middle, I suppose, towards the first fence, and then make a plan for the second fence. But there was no real pressure. He was 40-1, 33-1 all week before the Grand National. Obviously, price-wise tipped him, and he went from 33s to 8-1 on the day. But there was no pressure. There was no. It was just great to be there. It was great to be part of it. It was the Grand National. It was never a race you thought you could win. I grew up watching Irish horses not compete. I think Laura's Ball might have been fourth, maybe, with Conor O'Dwyer for Frank Berry one year. There was no expectation. It was just a dream come true to ride in a Grand National.
That's it, they're under orders, and away they go in the 2000 Martel Grand National. Down to the inside, Miko's Dream first to begin from Bobby Joe, and up there is Papillon, followed then by Listen Timmy, and out wider on the track Esprit de Cotte is prominent from Trinitro.
The early part of the race he broke really well and got a good start, crossed the Melling Road, slowed down to the first fence, jumped it well. Miko's Dream fell, when I got directly behind Paul and Bobby Joe, down over the ditch, had a look at the ditch but jumped the fourth really well. Fifth, Beechers, went to Foynehaven, not that far behind Paul. Bobby Joe hit Foynehaven, a real clout. I ended up actually going by him, but jumped the canal turn first time, got a good turn, and I was kind of slowing down from there, and it was just, I suppose, a dream really. You're going along and things are going so smooth, loose horses, and he was jumping from fence to fence up by the stands, got in really close to the chair, and headed out in the second circuit.
Field is Stormy Passage there in the centre, Lucky Town on the near side, then Escada Fig, Mealy Moss is further back from Call It A Day, Jetta is next in the field as they come down to the water, further back in the field, just behind Call It A Day is Nicky D.
And I got up into the box and I said, just watching him anyway. And Frank Berry, who's JP's racing manager is a personal friend of mine since we were kids, and he's there alongside me. And we were none of the two was too big, so we got up in two chairs at the back of the crowd in the box, so we could see out over him. And, you know, the big screen that's in front of you, and we're watching the screen and watching everything else. And he passes by the stand the first time. He's started fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth on the inside, jumping well, and look around. And Helen looks up at me, and Betty is typical of the Yank, you know, the whole thing is in the hoo-ha and the rest. And a lot of people in the box, with the exception of the real racing people, are wrapped up in it. I'm watching him. I'm sure JP is watching his couple of runners, and past the stands, he's travelling well and jumping well. And all of a sudden, he got a good run around the bend. And from being sort of seventh or eighth, he's all of a sudden sort of third or fourth on the inside, travelling like a dream. And everything is going well. But there's Beechers to jump again a second time, and there's the canal turn, and there's Valentine's, and I'm looking around to see if there's any loose horses and one thing or the other.
Ended up in front, going to Finehaven, canal turn. You know, all the times I watched Grand Nationals as a kid, you slow down, drift to your right, back into your left, jump the corner. I went to the canal turn, a couple of lengths in front, and lay on Papillon's neck, and he landed out almost at the canal. And I was thinking when I was turning, oh Jesus, what am I after giving away? But Lucky Town appeared. As we faced up to Valentine's, there was actually dolls in the fence after Valentine's, which hadn't been repaired, so the whole track had to come out to where I was. So I was kind of a bit of a breathe a sigh of relief there.
I look up, Frank Berry looks up at me, and I look at him. We just, that sort of way, and it just got sort of in me then. It's like, this something going to happen here. Do you know what I mean?
And it's Papillon who shows the way. From Lucky Town is up there. Mealy Moss, Norman Williamson sitting in behind. They're followed next in the field by Addington Boy.
4 out, 3 out, heading to the Mellon Road in front of the Grand National, and I can see loose ones coming down the mile course, and I'm thinking, oh Jesus, no. Casey was beside me on Melly Moss, or on Lucky Town. Norman was just behind me on Melly Moss, back onto the racecourse proper, jumped the second last, and you're thinking, I have a chance of winning the Grand National. And then Melly Moss appears, jumped the last. Again, you watch Grand Nationals, don't commit till you get to the elbow. You jump the second last with a chance of winning, and you commit him. And I sent him, and he went away from Melly Moss up to the elbow, got to the elbow, drifted right, pricked his ears. Norman came back down my inside on Melly Moss, and from thinking you're going to win a Grand National to thinking you've just lost the Grand National.
I had watched Devon Lock on television, and it stuck with me all my life. I'd watched Chris home and hosed at the back of the last for Red Rum to get to him.
Red Rum is pounding after him. Red Rum is the one that's finishing the strongest. He's going to get up. Red Rum is going to win the National. And at the line, Red Rum has just snatched it from Crispin.
I wasn't counting any chickens. And we had said beforehand, it's a long run up there. Whatever you do or don't do, don't commit until you meet the elbow. So anyway, he committed a little bit before the elbow, and our horse picked up and went. And just as he got to the elbow, he pricked his old ears.
And then Papillon rallied and got to the water jump, and he's starting to go away from Melly Moss, and you're starting to think this is going to happen. But like, it was only 20 yards and it felt like 2 miles.
It's Papillon holding on with 50 yards left to go, and Papillon wins the Martel Grand National.
How do you describe the feeling when you cross the line in the Grand National? And it's a question I ask people now that I'm this side of the microphone. You can't verbalise a feeling like that. There is no way of verbalising it. It's just an incredible feeling that you'd love to have over and over again, but you're never going to get it again. And it was, like, Ted was standing in the middle of the track, Katie had led him up, Gillian and Jennifer, Mum, Dad, everyone was there. It was a surreal experience.
It was probably, without a shadow of a doubt, other than when the kids were born or when I met Helen, the greatest day of my life. And no matter what I do or might do in the racing world, I don't think, other than Katie winning it on Seabass, which she didn't, she was third, would have equalled it. It was absolutely everything that you could dream of. If you ever lay in bed and had a magic dream, I was reliving it here at Ainsworth.
You can watch it back on tape, and I can see Paul Carberry saying well done or Adrian Maguire saying well done, but I honestly don't remember those moments. I remember my brother Ted's face as clear as day. I remember Katie, Brendan Brady, who has always been a part of Dad's team, and I can remember those faces, meeting Dad on the walk back in, seeing Gillian in the old winners enclosure with Jennifer and my mum, and they're the faces, even Betty Moran's, but they're the people and the faces I remember most. I suppose heading back in there, the long walk back in, and people trying to hang on to Papillon and Ted knocking him out of the way, and the crowd, like, and in fairness to him, he was a really quiet horse, two big police horses either side of him, but like, it was an incredible experience. I was nowhere near as cool as Paul Cadbury. I wasn't going to hang from the balustrades and drop myself onto the ground. I didn't even know what to do. Walk back in and tip my cap. It was just an incredible time.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.